Welcome back to the 1760 sessions, conversations with founders and creators building high impact businesses with lean teams and very strong missions. Today, I'm joined by the fantastic Stephen Loguidice, founder of, don't butcher me for saying this, Varisa.
Yeah,
Okay,
very, very close. Yeah.
okay, awesome. Apologies. A revenue growth consultancy helping creator led businesses scale sustainably. Stephen's got a vast experience, 22 plus years in media, revenue, leadership, from working with BuzzFeed to Maxim. Stephen specializes in turning talent-driven attention into real scalable revenue. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Harry. I'm stoked.
Awesome. So, first things first, I want to dive into your sort of origin story, so to speak. So, you've built revenue engines inside some of the biggest media brands. What made you step out and go solo, essentially?
Yeah. So you touched on it. 22, 23 years in the media and entertainment space. Started in MTV Networks back in kind of its heyday, back in the early 2000s. Maxim Digital for a little bit, and then was one of the original business team members at BuzzFeed when we were growing and essentially pioneering distributed content the way it is being used now. And was there for about a decade and built three high growth revenue teams over there, and then was at Kevin Hart's company Heartbeat for a little over
Very cool.
15 years, standing up their partnerships division and how they're monetizing partnerships, both brand and strategic partnerships across their flywheel of business. So did that for about 3 years, had a lot of success there, and just it's always been in me where I'm like I don't necessarily want to know if how long I want to work for someone, right?
Yeah,
And
of
so,
course.
yeah, so I saw an opportunity to be able to take the things that I've gotten really amazing at. Obviously, being able to scale revenue and build infrastructure and be able to make money for companies, but also just building really strong culture and teams and leadership and really developing talent and all of the places I've worked and led at has been, we're like the North Star culture within my division because of that. So like it gives me the opportunity to work with a lot of different companies, and a lot of different founders and really smart and interesting people, but then also gives me the ability to do that the leadership development and scaling like at a large scale with a lot of different amazing people as well too. So that was kind of the catalyst for what pushed me to go on my own.
Yeah, of course. And it's just taking that experience and essentially giving it to other people when you've essentially been through it all. If you look at today's market, sort of creator-led businesses are pretty much exploding everywhere. They're popping up everywhere. What gap did you see that inspired Varisa?
Yeah, so look, I've been working with creators for years. We had a, creator studio at BuzzFeed back, I left there in 2019 and we were already building something out there. Beat was all creators, right? It wasn't really what we were building wasn't really Kevin in front of the camera, though we did a lot of work with Kevin. So I watched this shift start to really happen when I stepped away from Heartbeat, where this is the new media, right? Like everybody's saying that, and like this is the way that content is being distributed, content is being created, communities are being built. It's all centered around creators now. But what I notice is a lot of them, whether they're individuals or even these companies that are agencies and studios that are building out the infrastructure, I don't think they realize how to wrangle around the long term value. So everybody's making money in the creator space right now
Yeah.
because of how hot it is. But what I do and where I'm actually able to come in and help these businesses and say, all right, once this boom is flattened out,
How do you
what's
stay afloat?
a sustainable
Yeah.
business that we can build that can grow the way I've done it multiple times in the past? What are the moats that we can build around the businesses you're building? What are the revenue streams and the new levers that we can be pulling so that it's not just you're doing the same thing you're doing right now and that's the only way you make money. And so that's where I saw the big need. And I think my media experience, like that foundational part of what makes legacy media and getting hundreds of millions and billions of dollars in revenue, is the part I think is lacking. I think a lot of folks in the creator space are trying to throw the baby out with the bathwater and saying we're the new new way to do things, and it's like great,
Yeah.
foundational bricks, like you should use those because there's a reason that like brands and align partnerships and business development deals are like massively bigger when you go to like a legacy media company. It's because of these things, and so I'm able to bring that know-how in with kind of the new way of doing things and merge them together and say, okay, this is how we can make this really big.
It sounds very cool. And it's like you've got to stay on top of trends, but you're the guy that has experience. I saw a tagline, and is it talent gets attention, we make it profitable? Is
Yeah,
that one of yours, I think?
that is mine. Yeah, yeah.
What can you explain what that kind of means in practice?
Well, look, right. uh, uh,
I know you've kind of just touched on it, but like, what does
Yeah,
that look like on a day to day?
the creator economy is kind of what everybody says, creator economy, but it's really the attention economy. And so, if you think about creators, you think about media companies, you think about entertainment companies, it's all vying for attention. And
Yeah.
attention is finite and dropping. If you look at it over the last 10 years, it was like the average attention span of like somebody on the internet was like a minute and 40 seconds. It's now like under a minute.
Yeah.
So you have this boom of supply going into the marketplace. The attention is dropping, and like you have the most amount of people that you have, right, that can go digitally or on screen or on platforms. It's why actually to kind of go off the rails for a second, it's why you're seeing like the deals with like Spotify and some of these other audio companies where like they're and TikTok is now making it where you can like listen to podcasts and scroll and swipe like doom scroll with your ears because they're like,
I didn't even
how do
know
we,
that.
yeah, so it's something new that just came out where, think of how you swipe and you scroll when you're looking at videos. Now it's like you could be walking through the city or on a bus or whatever, and now you can just do it with your podcast in bite-sized pieces. So it's like everybody's trying to figure out, it's like, how do I get the attention in those little pockets when people aren't going to be
But
getting
yeah.
anywhere else? It's horrible for humans as a society because I think like overstimulation is gonna be a real problem. But that's what everybody's vying for, is the attention part, right? So when I say we take attention and make it profitable, everybody's vying for attention. Creators get it in a great way, but how you monetize it is the real difference, right? So there's the standard way that everybody knows. It gets very commoditized. Or can you build ecosystem around what you're doing? Can you is there a data piece to it? Is there a feedback loop of information that now you can bring out to the marketplace to create new revenue streams, and or just be able to say, hey, the value that I'm able to bring you is worth 10x what like what you would normally give somebody else. So it's taking that attention and just saying, okay, how do we monetize? How do we make it profitable? And how do we make it scalable?
Okay. So I would love to unpick into this because as
Yeah.
someone who's a guilty scroller who tries not to scroll, literally deletes Instagram for this reason and deletes TikToks for these reasons. Is it about trying to get the right message from the right person at the right time, or is it the length of message? And what goes into it from your end?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm looking at it from a business side of things. So if you're an amazing creator that talks about business or investing or mom problems, parenting, whatever it may be, right? Or you're just an entertainer, you're honing your craft. And I can talk to you about how you need to be thinking about being on different platforms in different ways, but at the end of the day, like you're the one that's making this real connection with a community of people. I hate calling them audiences because they're not. Like we are dealing with humans. So it's very EQ heavy and everything that's
Yeah,
going on
yeah.
in your space over IQ. So where I'm able to come in and say, hey, you have 1 million followers, you have 50,000 followers, whatever. Here's how you can take that, and these are the ways that we can monetize them. How you're growing that, this is where we can actually think about what are the revenue levers we can, right? So, sorry, go ahead.
No, no, no. I'm just listening.
Yeah. So, for example, you have a great audience. You're posting, long form YouTube videos 3 times a week, right? You're very active. You
Yeah,
have that. You can get your advertising. You can bring in your brand partnerships. But at the end of the day, it's going to be really based on you being in front of the camera and uh, the audience, like what the viewership is and your followers, and that's how like the math's kind of done. Where I can look at that and say, okay, how do we build actually an ecosystem around all the social that you're doing, the narrative and the topics that you're actually talking on, where we can give scaled media value to these brand partners per se, utilize the new tools that the platforms are actually rolling out, where you can like cross promote on other channels and think about doing
Okay.
collaborations. But then from there, how are we actually monetizing, consumer goods? How are we thinking about live experiences that you can layer in? What are the other aspects of your business now that it's not just you in front of the camera posting and whatever a brand will give you, but where is the revenue actually able to come so that that revenue, grows exponentially?
So for creators and these talent-led businesses that we've been talking about, where do you see the most amount of revenue then left on the table?
I mean, the place I see the most revenue being left on the table right now, in the conversations that I'm having is, uh, I see it in these studios and agencies a lot, where they might have like 50 or 80 creators under their umbrella. They're representing them
Yeah.
out in the marketplace, and it's very commoditized. Where it's like, hey, we need a Latina mom, right, to do this thing for our brand, and it's like a one sheet of like five creators that fit that bill with just like their follower count versus, and then it's like, all right, we want this one, right? It's kind of like a Chinese menu, and there's more to it. They're doing more, but I'm like, essentially, it's very commoditized, right? Where I look at it and say, okay, you have 80 creators, you have hundreds of millions of views and impressions happening every single month across your company. Why not be able to go out and say, hey, I have one creator that fits this perfectly. She tells
Yeah.
stories better than anyone in that audience. We're going to create a series for you, with you, specifically for you, that's anchored right into what she always talks about, and it's perfect for her community. But then we're gonna distribute it across our ecosystem and give you millions of engagements and views across that exact type of audience, whether they're within her individual community or not. We're able to reach them at scale, and that changes that deal for that creator from maybe being $100,000 partnership deal to being like a $750,000 partnership deal, because you're able to show real media value, right? And you can create ancillary content with other creators and give them licensing. Like, is
And
there a
it,
live experience that you can do with it, right? And so like at Heartbeat, that's what we were doing. We were working with comedic creators, and we didn't even have our own, or like an O&O that we were distributing out on. We were pushing it out socially. So we were saying, hey, we have this comedic gamer that fits this profile. We're going to do these ideas. You kind of find out what the ideas are, and then it's like, and I can guarantee you 5 million views across YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, and this is going to be a $500,000 right thing. That's like, we didn't even own that creator. The creator might only have a few 100,000 followers, but we're able to give them media value and a valued program that's worth $500,000. And I think that's where there's a lot of money being left on the table, is not realizing like how to show that media value and that scale, outside of the creator's following, right?
so it almost feels like it's like almost like a snowball effect. Like once this person has this project, it then grows and grows and grows across different media streams, and then putting in other creators. You mentioned ancillary. It's probably people not realizing how big the project could potentially be, and you're going in there and helping them recognize that, I so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all of those pieces, thinking about it being like like a cross-platform proposal, where it's, hey, I'm going to do a bunch of stuff on social. We're going to have a bunch of assets that we can actually give to you to utilize on your O&O, right? Or for your audience, in case they don't know, their owned and operated channel. So if it's a brand that has their own audiences, right? Like, how do we actually give you something that now you can use, so it gives it more value and more impact for them, and we're able to create IP out of it. You can license this to use through your advertising. Like, there's so many ways, and it's not just one note. And I think being able to leverage those things, is really powerful.
That's incredibly powerful. I was also reading through your site, and you're talking about avoiding feel-good metrics.
Yeah,
Can you talk to me a little bit about that? So, if you're avoiding feel-good metrics, what are the meaningful ones then?
yeah. So look, I mean, feel good metrics can be a lot of things. If we talk about creator space, right? It's like
Yeah.
there's views and follower count, which kind of mean nothing now. But I talk about feel good metrics across the board, like especially in leadership and sales and revenue, right? So, you know, you look at, you ask me like what are the important ones instead of the feel good ones. So everybody looks at these things, they're called lag measures, right? So it's like we want to make $50 million in our business. I'm brought in as a fractional CRO for a lot of my clients. I've done that work within organizations, right? And so there's always that big number that you're going after. But the lead measures are the things that you're actually measuring that are going to impact. And the key thing is committing to them. So if you're thinking about, and I'm just gonna like give like really simple ones, right? But it's like, hey, we're going after $50 million. We identified that these three products are our highest margin, our biggest renewal,
Yeah.
right? Like they're our best. We want to focus on them. Okay, so we want to make sure that we are bringing this up to market to the right partners as much as possible. So for the next 12 months, we are going to make sure that we are pitching these products as a bundle together to three new clients a week, right? And then how does that start? We have to start with having CMO meetings at this on these categories, right? So then you're now monitoring, you're measuring and tracking. Did we hit those five CMO meetings this week in this category or these five categories, right? And then did we get those pitches
Makes
out?
sense now, yeah.
And the idea is if you track that, regardless of if that $50 million number is moving, if you commit to that and you continue, you don't wither from it. If you do it and you do it consistently, it's impossible for you not to progress towards that goal
So
because you
it's
already know that the data's there.
it's all about hitting the small metrics that lead up to that big North Star goal,
Exactly.
essentially.
Yeah.
Interesting enough, have you ever read a book called Atomic Habits?
I have. I have.
So that's where my brain was going when you were talking about this. I was like, okay, so I've read Atomic Habits, and it's all about, making small incremental changes, which effectively change that big goal which you're aiming towards. Is that what you're also trying to say about, say, these meaningful metrics? Start with the metrics that affect you on a day to day that actually result in that bigger goal.
Yeah, exactly. And there's another book. It's very similar, right? So Atomic Habits talks about like start with one push up, right? Like make it so small that like it's embarrassing to not hit the goal, and then you build on it. And
Yeah,
so 100%. And then the other side of that is there's a book called The Four Disciplines of Execution. I don't know if you've ever read
I've
that.
heard of it, but I haven't read it.
Yeah, great book. So they talk about that, and they talk about it in that realm of like you have these lead measures and these lag measures, and lag measures are not measurable because like you kind of are just looking at like something in the rearview mirror, right? Where these lead measures are, how do you think of like what's the smallest, simplest thing that you can do that will impact the business that like without a doubt is your number one priority every week, right?
I
And
like
so
that. Yeah,
well, one of the things we were talking about earlier is like leadership, right? I love leading teams. I love creating new leaders and leading leaders and everything else. And so, in that book, it talks about you get commitment from the individuals that have to do it, and they ultimately have to like kind of pick that what's those measures. So again, it's like what's the one thing, what's the one little thing you can do, but like every week. So then when I meet with that leader next week, that's the first thing I ask them: did we hit those two things? And if it's no, then you're able to have a conversation around, okay, why not in a scolding way, but like why not, what do we
it's
need to do?
almost like a non-negotiable kind of thing that you have to do in
Non-negotiable.
order to.
Like that's
Yeah,
the one thing. Out of anything else, we have identified that one thing or those two things we are going to
yeah,
do without a fail. So if it's like going back to that idea of pitching three clients that that product, that specific product or partnership, right? I only got one out. Okay, why? Because we didn't have the meetings here. Okay, cool. What can I do to help? What are we going to do this week? What are you going to change? The conversations you now have with those people and those individuals or those teams becomes very problem solving because you already know what you're going after there's a scoreboard, you're measuring it, right? So again, it's like cool, we missed it this week, next week we're going to hit it. 6 months from now I'm going to have you know what is that, 120 days, right? Or how many weeks is that, 18 weeks, right? 26 weeks. Yeah, 20 or 26 weeks. So 26 weeks times three, I'm going to have, 80 new proposals out. Like it's impossible. I already know this is the best thing we sell. I already know this is the best partnership. Our clients love it when they're in,
yeah.
they grow. So it's like, it's that thing where it's like, that's the only thing I care about. And that's the only thing they care about. But you have to commit to it. You have to get them to commit to it. And the commitment comes from them essentially identifying and choosing it. Like as a leader, if I tell them, this is what I want you to do. That's fine, but I'm
It
just
needs to come in their language because then they can
yeah.
commit to it further.
Well, it
Um,
goes back to that question of like, what's
yeah,
that one thing, right? And so it's the one push up. It's like, hey, you want to get in shape. It's like, what's this? What's the smallest thing you could do every single day? Because you want to make these things trackable and measurable within a short. It's usually weekly, right? Daily is a little bit too short, right? But within weekly, like there are things depending that can be daily, but I like it on a weekly basis where you can plan it out, and at the end of the week, it's like, hey, if you do this one thing, so it's like the push up, they look at me and say, "Hey, if I did one push up every single day, I could do that. I could do that every day." And I feel like by like next week, I can make it two or whatever, right? They picked it. I'm like, "Cool, commit to it." And then I'm like, "Did you do your push up, right?"
hold them accountable. Yeah, yeah.
So it's just holding them accountable to a commitment that they're making to you, you know. And so
Nice.
that scales and spans across when you think about marketing, when you think about client services, when you think about operations, right? Like what are those one things, that you know that you can commit to, and then that's how you measure those little things that add up to be really big things at the end.
I would say I'll come round and borrow the book off you sometime, but I think we're quite far away. So after this, you'll have to send me the name and I'll download it. But yeah, that's fascinating. So it's about taking that sort of atomic habits one step further, and it's
Yeah,
like that accountability piece. I really, really like that.
yeah,
Um, because the majority of our listeners, we do touch upon pieces around AI, just because it's obviously what 1760 does, and it's at the forefront of every organization at the moment. I think you've mentioned to me prior to this, you use tools like Claude and ChatGPT. What role does AI at the moment play in your workflow?
yeah. So I've used Claude and ChatGPT for kind of probably the things that everybody uses them for. I help it organize my thoughts. Um, you know, you know, uh, can like as an assistant to help me brainstorm things. So I don't use those necessarily as like a replacement. I use them more as okay, like even for this podcast. Hey,
How can I enhance?
here's your philosophies, right? Like let's kind of go back and forth, ask me some questions. Like let's kind of frame this up so I make sure I have the things that I want to talk about, depending on where
Yeah,
the conversation goes. From there, I have some automations that are built through Zapier that are tied into ChatGPT. One is is an automated prep document that's created for me. So
amazing,
when I have something on my calendar, 48 hours before the meeting, the agent will go in and it will pull the meeting attendees. It will look for any emails that we've backtracked. It'll look at the companies and the businesses that I'm talking to, and then it will pull together a prep document that it will drop into Notion for me into a folder.
amazing.
So then I can go and look at that. And then the cool thing is I can go back and say, go back to it and say, hey, or drop it into ChatGPT or Claude. I usually use ChatGPT for this type of stuff. I use Claude more for writing and some research. And so I'll drop it back into ChatGPT if I have questions and say, hey, take a look at this. Um, can you unpack this partnership that is referenced here? I want to understand, explain it to me like I have no idea. And then I'll ask, ChatGPT to like explain like really in a like fundamental terms and understanding so that I can walk in that meeting and be really educated on it, right?
Oh,
So
I
we
love
do
that.
that for the prep, and then afterwards it goes in. I use Tactic as my AI transcriber. It goes in, it pulls that, and then it drops the transcript along with a like action plan and summary and an action plan back in a Notion. So then I can go there and I have the conversation there. I have the key highlights and everything else. So that's that's kind of the coolest way I'm using AI right now. I do want to utilize it more around CRM because I see a lot
Okay.
of value. I'm a very big like data guy as far as like I talked about EQ, but I do use data to help me inform and understand like how things work and to help me point and make decisions. And so since I'm working around revenue and at the end of the day I'm a solopreneur that's working with clients and trying to figure out what's the best you know best clients for me, how am I growing them, what's working, what's not, right? So I'm thinking about how do I use an agent. I would love to hear your thoughts on it, or some sort of tool to act as my revenue operation,
Yeah.
right? Because I've always had a revenue operations person in any of my senior executive leadership roles where I have a rev ops person that I can sit down and be like, pull all the data, dissect it for me. Let's talk about let's look at what's kind of, showing up and showing us, right? And so I want to start doing that, a bit more.
Yeah, of course. And that's a great answer. And by the way, you're using AI a lot more than a lot of other people are, including myself. I was like, whoa, this Notion sounds good. I
Yeah,
was like, you might.
Notion's cool. I picked up Notion from a client.
Yeah.
I've been using I'm very new to Notion, only a couple of months, and so I'm still trying to learn and make sure that I'm using it properly.
And that's why we have these conversations. It's all about information sharing, especially with like solopreneurs and something like myself and Matt, who look after 1760. We're always interested in hearing more. But you can fit AI into pretty much any of your workflows or any of your work streams in terms of like BDR, outbound generation. Have you ever thought of or considered that before?
A, a bit here. Here's my issue is I don't trust it enough to speak for me on my behalf. So
Yeah.
even when I do, like I've been posting a lot more on LinkedIn, right? Because it's the nature of the world we're in. You have to be, kind of active on there. And so it still takes me like I'm a math and science guy, so like writing also is like takes me longer than normal. But like I will put a bunch of thoughts, I'll put a stream of
Yeah.
thoughts, like jotting in a notepad. I will ask it exactly the format, and then like I'll get it a couple variations, and then I'll rewrite most of it, right? So I don't. And I've also gotten so many bad AI outreach too from other folks. Like one guy, like here's a funny story. One guy reached out to me and it was like I felt the need to respond to him, right? Like I was like, dude, I've been running, sales teams forever, right? Like I appreciate the hustle, but like this is a fucking nightmare, right? Like, sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to curse, but like you have my
No,
name
of course you
wrong.
are.
Like, this is referring to like the hospitality industry. Like this is just, yeah. I'm like, you should go back and rework your AI.
Yeah. And
Never responded to me. Never responded to me.
it's probably not AI that's done that. It's probably the outbounding engine behind that where he hasn't gone in and edited it. But it's like it's an easy mistake to make, and I have done those roles before, and then when I've had to do a lot of outbounding before AI, and I have a million times messed up someone's name or anything about what they do. It's always embarrassing. But AI these days is you can train it to your tone of voice, and in a way that you can the actual automated response that will go out coming from whether it's an email or whatever channel you're using to put your message out there will come in your voice. Okay. And it's trained and learned on your voice. And then furthermore, if you're spending a lot of time writing this content or whatever it may be, posting on LinkedIn, can post automatically for you. And then furthermore, take your content and instead of putting it into one great long LinkedIn post that someone's more than likely going to see, oh, that's a lot of text and skim past it, can chain it down into bite-sized chunks and drip feed it. A lot of outreach these days is that I've been and worked in a sales career for over 10 years now. And it used to be very much here's the product, this is what I'm offering, here's some sort of value point. Do you want to speak to me or not? Are you the right person? That's kind of it. That's kind of that's the engagement you'd have with someone. Nowadays, and why AI is helping a lot of businesses get ahead, is you can essentially drip feed content across 20 to 30 different touch points, multiple channels, and you don't have to put the time and effort into doing it. AI is doing it seamlessly in the background for you. And that's where a lot of what you spoke about not trusting AI, and that's where a lot of our teams that we work with in our community share that pain. It's you want that human touch, you want the BD, but that's where AI can learn from you to become that further extended version of yourself, so you don't have to put those hours into essential that lead generation or that content creation when you can do what matters most, and that's aiding your customers on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, we can discuss that more after this pod. I'm realizing we are not too far from time, and I really just wanted to ask you a couple of questions as your organization is something that's I was about to swear there. I was going to say, but
Yeah, sorry.
it's no. I was going to say it's fucking interesting. I might as well say it.
Yeah,
So what's next for Varisa in 2025? Well, now 2026,
yeah.
and where do you see yourself in say the next like 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a couple of avenues. So one is the leadership stuff, right? It's something that I love and it's the most enjoyable part of my job. So how am I doing more of that leadership development? and really leaning into that, both from kind of a leadership advisor for founders and CEOs at the executive level, and even development for the VPs, director levels, and how can organizations help like groom their top leaders to be the next CRO, CMO, like whomever, right? So that's a big one, and I'm thinking about like what that looks like from like a playbook. And it's actually something you and I should talk about after this call, as far as like what is the things that I can build that can take all of my philosophies and teachings and be able to kind of put it in something where somebody has that accessible 24/7, where like they might not have me, right? And so it's something I'm thinking about. And then the other side is, so with Varisa, right? I'm going in fractional CRO work, chief revenue officer, thinking about how we're pulling revenue levers and scaling growth. And that touches sales, that touches operations, that touches marketing, that touches client services and product and all of these different things, right? So I'm also thinking about what are the spokes in the wheel, because right now I'm a one man show, right? What's the spokes in the wheel I can potentially build out, right? Where it's like I don't do direct selling. I help with the strategy. I'll help work with sales teams. I'll even help like with proposal generation, but I'm not going to go and hit the market, right? Do I have a SWAT team that I have and I know killer sellers all through the industry, right? That can come in and do some direct sales. Do I have like a paid media arm that can do the distribution at scale for some of these companies that don't have that in place? Thinking about revenue operations, thinking about marketing, right, and social, and those types of things. So that's kind of where my head is at as far as like the growth of Risa is. How do I start coming in and thinking about revenue at the higher level, and then being able
Nice.
to plug in different things as needed, right? But I don't want to be an agency, if that makes sense. Though everything I just described to you is an agency, right?
My closing question then is, what do you think's stopping you from getting there then?
It's a great question, right? I think focus is my big thing right now, right? Like right now, how do I continue to focus and get like I'm like a big believer in the Amazon model of business.
Okay.
Right, what that means is you know, Amazon only sold books until they put Barnes and Nobles out of business or whatever the equivalent is in the UK, right? Or whoever, right? Like they didn't sell anything else until every other bookstore was going out of business. And then they started selling socks. And then they started selling, right? But like now everybody pops up and it's like, I want to be like Amazon and sell everything. And there's a reason why those companies aren't Amazon's, because Amazon got really, really good at one thing and then started layering. So I think that's the biggest thing is like, how do I get to a point where like I'm billing, $2,000 an hour for my time, and then I can be like, cool, let's start layering these other things because I don't want to get distracted and
Of
you know,
course. And
the jack of all trades generalist thing like confuses people, I think, a lot too. Like I'm constantly trying to hone down
and
and
it must be
focus.
hard because probably people give you slight tweaks into what they want, and you're like, oh well, I can help with that. And it's
Exactly.
I get what you mean. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, Stephen, I'm annoyed we didn't book the full hour
yeah,
because we could have kept talking here, and I had some more questions to ask you. But we'd probably have to get you back in for another podcast.
yeah.
But
Whatever.
thank you so much for joining. Fascinating. It's not something that we generally talk about every day, and it's really interesting learning about how you're helping creators and how I picture in my head that snowball of revenue that you can bring them. So thank you very much for coming on.
This was great, Harry. I really appreciate it. I had a lot of fun. Love to come back. So let me know whenever you're game, and I'm game.
Thank you very much, Stephen.